Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am your host, much more well-rested now, Joe Kuzma. Maybe a few of you heard. Got a lot of episodes coming this week. Busy holiday weekend. If I don't have a chance, I'm sure I'll say it before this show is completed and done. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Y'all be safe out there. Have a good couple days of rest, relaxation. Spend time with friends and family. Give everyone a hug and a kiss. Let them know you miss them, you love them. Doesn't matter the age, the gender, the relation. You know, when you have people that are close to you, you know how it feels during this holiday to get together. Warm feelings, and hopefully warm feelings with Steelers family as well, as I hope to get together on Thanksgiving as I did several years ago in what was a heartbreaking loss in Baltimore, most famously known for Mike Tomlin stepping on the field, Jacoby Jones not getting that return for a touchdown. Mike Tomlin was fined six figures, I remember back then, for that. And that was a little bit a while ago. It's almost like the ghost of Thanksgiving past. And I'm not looking for a repeat. Steelers always on the road in these big games. Playing in 3 holidays. This is the first of 3 coming up this Thursday as they travel to Indianapolis to face this similar 500 level 5-5 Indianapolis Colts. Same record as the Steelers. Also looking and fighting and biting and clawing in their division, the AFC South, coming off a victory last weekend against their own division rival, the Tennessee Titans. 24-17 was that final. And, of course, the Colts get to stay at home, but they are a little shell-shocked this week. And they haven't played very well against the Steelers, even with the full cast of characters that they normally have. A lot of research for this particular game and this actual show, which you guys will be hearing. You'll be able to see and read the physical preview by Brian Roach over on SteelCityUnderground.com. Thank you, Brian, for digging up a few of these figures and numbers and facts and whatnot that I'm going to throw out during this episode. You know, I'm on a little bit of a high, but people are still skeptic. I think a lot of people really just dragged themselves down into believing that a Mike Tomlin coach team could lose to an 0-10 Cleveland Browns squad just because it was on the road. And I think we still haven't succumbed to the fact that the Steelers team on a short week, usually teams on the road for Thursday Night Football, not exactly favored. But the Indianapolis Colts are without some key pieces. Dale Lally was reporting just a little while ago that he spoke with T.Y. Hilton and said that there was a team meeting and they were told that Andrew Luck will not play this week, this Thursday, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Andrew Luck placed into the league's concussion protocol after taking a pretty sharp hit on Sunday. He's not the only one, though. They also have a safety that is also entered into the concussion protocol, Clayton Gaithers. And they also are banged up a little bit along their secondary, a secondary that's actually ranking even worse than the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 30th in the pass. They're giving up 285 yards per game. They're allowing a 66% completion percentage. And now it looks like Vontae Davis has been spotted walking around in a boot on Monday, which, of course, Colts coach Chuck Pagano, these poor coaches, they get asked about these injuries and everything. They got to keep track of all this stuff, but he says it's precautionary. Rashawn Melvin, he was rested with a lower back injury. Patrick Robinson, he missed Sunday's game with a groin injury, but was practicing on Monday. It's going to be interesting to see how many of these banged-up players in the Colts secondary, which is already reeling, are going to be able to show up and play, and of course, play on a short week. The Steelers are up against it. They did not practice on Monday. They get 2 days of practice with Tuesday and Wednesday. They're going to Thursday. They do have the night game, so I guess that's a little bit of a silver lining here. And should they be successful in Indianapolis, you never know. They could take the lead in the division. Depends on what happens with the Bengals and Ravens on Sunday. But the Steelers will have at least a mini bye after this game after traveling to Indianapolis, which isn't that long of a trip. They've had some short trips all year long, which is surprising to see why they're still kind of bad on the road. But I digress. I still say it has to deal with injuries and major key pieces that weren't there. We see how much of a force Ryan Shazier is when healthy. We're starting to see some of these youngsters come along on the defense. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. The Colts defense, again, not good against the pass, also not good against the run. They rank 25th. They're allowing 113.1 yards per game, 4.5 yards per carry. And last week against the Tennessee Titans, who are mainly built for ground and pound, they only allowed 70 yards by DeMarco Murray. But Marcus Mariota completed 65.8% of his passes, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns. They had Rashard Matthews, their leading wide receiver 1, I suppose you'd want to call him, had 9 catches for 122 yards. That was on 13 targets. But Big Ben has been phenomenal against the Colts. In the last 3 games against Indianapolis, he has thrown for 364 yards and 4 TDs. Going back right before that was the 6-touchdown performance for 522 yards when everyone had a pit in their stomach similar to what we're experiencing heading into this Thursday. We go into Heinz Field. We don't know what kind of Pittsburgh Steelers team we have. Ben just lights it up for 6 touchdowns. Does it 2 weeks in a row, if you remember, also against the Baltimore Ravens the following week. 364 yards and a touchdown the game before that. It's been absolutely on fire. That's over 1,200 yards and 11 TDs in the last 3 games against the Colts. I don't see the Colts having much of a run attack. Frank Gore, 50 yards rushing in his last game. Sure, he has 600 and some yards rushing. Le'Veon Bell nearly has that as well, and Le'Veon Bell's been catching more passes and been more of a receiving threat. Speaking of, got into a healthy discussion online with one of my buddies, Ron Liplock, who runs Pittsburgh Sports Daily Bulletin. Has a good website, also has a great book out with all kinds of memoirs. I think over 400 player interviews. If you want to check that out, it's available on Amazon and a few other places. Ron usually pops in here and there at Pittsburgh Sport on Twitter, and we were talking about one of the things people are talking about is this Dallas Cowboys team, the one that beat the Steelers. See, I still feel Steelers had some real bad luck they've had some bad luck on the road a lot, but losing to the Patriots without Ben Roethlisberger in what was a winnable game, even with Landry Jones and a number of other starters out, and then of course the Dallas Cowboys game that was a nail-biter down to the very finish. I look ahead at this schedule and say this is where this team could turn around. It wasn't necessarily the sharpest performance against the Cleveland Browns, but I thought it was a turning point. The weather wasn't exactly kind. You're going to have that first real cold. I mean, it was beautiful in Heinz Field for that Cowboys game, even for it ended up being into night because of the, turning the clocks. What do we do? Fall forward, fall back. One or the other. We don't want to fall at all as far as this Steelers team. But anyways, the time change, they're playing in the dark for most of the second half. Part of the second quarter even, I think the sun was already down. That 4:25 start, the doubleheader. What was that on Fox? Yeah, they had Troy Aikman. Joe Buck, too. Joe Buck is so bad. God, what a homer that guy is. Anyway, I'm getting way off point here. What I'm trying to say is, folks, this is really the first time, even with that, it was still in like the 40s or whatnot. You didn't have the whipping wind that affected the way the ball was played. You didn't have the cold air into your lungs sucking, burning, that feeling. Go take a jog outside. Those of you that are over in this part of the country, that is western Pennsylvania, northeast Ohio, parts of Maryland and West Virginia, it is cold. It has been cold for like since the weekend. I don't know what happened. Somebody flipped the switch. Old man Winter showed up. And now, you know what? That's out of the system. So that's not even going to matter on Thursday because Indianapolis plays in a dome. And it's going to be a little loud in a dome. We were talking about how players play on the road and whatnot, but Ben has been Ben. Ben against Indianapolis has been phenomenal. And I do think there's going to be, because of the holiday, a large contingent of Steeler fans there as well. So it's going to be interesting. But without Andrew Luck, this game that was already pretty much manageable now becomes even more likely with Scott Tolzien in there. Now, I don't want to make any assumptions because you just never know. You never know what the game plan is going to dictate. You just never know when players are going to decide not to show up. We saw it with the Steelers go into Baltimore with Ryan Mallett at quarterback last year, and he didn't have a whole lot of time with that team at all. So at least Tolzien's been there for a while, but he only gets a couple days to prepare and get ready. Reminds me of trying to win the game against Baltimore, when we had Michael Vick, and he was ill-prepared as a backup. He's much more of a veteran quarterback, I think much more capable, had better weapons than what Scott Tolzien has. Scott Tolzien has T.Y. Hilton, Phil Dorsett if he's healthy, Dante Moncrief. They have a couple of capable receivers, but I think the Steelers have figured this out now. They're getting creative on defense. They're moving players around, rushing Timmons from the edge, leaving him in there because as an inside linebacker and just dropping him into coverage, they were pulling him off the field on third downs. Now, hey, let's put him all over the place, moving Tuitt around. Javon Hargrave, the recipient of his first sack, coming in and crossing with Tuitt, one of those almost like a fire blitz, but instead with the defensive lineman splitting the gaps, and Tuitt takes two guys with him. These are the type of things we're going to see. We're going to see Artie Burns and Ross Cockrell stay on their respective sides of the field. Ross Cockrell gave up a few plays to Terrell Pryor last week. A couple big passes, deep passes. Cockrell had been phenomenal. Maybe this is the beneficiary of getting used to maybe not tracking a man all over the field. So that means Artie Burns may or may not see T.Y. Hilton all of the game. But Colts still have some capable receivers. The thing is here, will Tolzien be able to get the ball to them? Because if Gore cannot run the football, and they have not been good at running the football, believe Gore is somewhere in the average of 4 yards per game, this could be a problem for the Colts. They also have some decent tight ends. Dwayne Allen, pretty much a touchdown threat in the red zone. So it's going to be interesting to see what Tolzien can do here. He has had a career quarterback rating of 67.1. He's only thrown one touchdown in his career to 5 picks, 717 yards, 56 of 90 attempts. So I don't know. But I was having this conversation. I'm going to jump back. I was talking about Ron. We're talking about who he's comparing this Dallas Cowboys team and saying that Dak has other guys to throw the ball to. Cole Beasley. And they're saying, well, Dez really stepped up. Well, Cole Beasley stepped up because Dez was hurt for most of this year. Steelers have been facing injuries too. They've been getting guys that have been helping. There's been supporting cast there, but it's been different guys all the time. Just depends who, when, and where. You get somebody that can catch maybe 4 or 5 passes, add 50, 60 yards, maybe a touchdown here or there. That's easily Jesse James. Sammy Coates through the first 4 or 5 games before he breaks his fingers, which is also the reason he hasn't been on the field. We're going to see how he participates in practice. I kind of doubt he's a full go again, but never know. I've been putting him out there at least to try and stretch the field. They need somebody. Darius Hayward-Bay's hurt as well. Darius Hayward-Bay, not the largest contributor other than when he started against the Patriots with Landry Jones there before getting hurt. Antonio Brown's Antonio Brown. Kobe Hamilton and Eli Rogers. Eli Rogers has stepped up a few times here. Kobe's had opportunity. He caught the touchdown pass against Miami Dolphins. He also had a long reception to open the second half against the Cowboys. He's been clutch on third downs, as has Eli. And, of course, Le'Veon Bell, who I've always said has been the second best receiver on this team. I don't think we need to worry about that as much. You're making the comparison. Somebody in Ron wanted to say Jason Witten. Jason Witten had his first 100-yard game the game before they played the Pittsburgh Steelers. They played the Browns. Terrible against just about anything and everyone. Witten had his first 100-yard game since, I think, 2013. So it's not like he's this huge contributor to be feared. And it's not like the Cowboys are really doing anything better, maybe running the football. Great offensive line. The Steelers have a great offensive line, too. So I expect them to feed Lev Bell. They did that last week. I think a lot of people are looking way into this way too much about having people other than AB to throw to. Because when you throw to anyone besides AB, AB says, hey, why aren't you throwing to me? This guy's the GOAT. Could be the greatest of all time. He's certainly working on it. 600 receptions in the shortest amount of time of any receiver ever in NFL history. Piles up and they make records in his name. Antonio Brown is very, very good. And there's no reason to really throw anybody else the ball. They throw him and they throw Lev Bell, and it's like, well, who else on offense needs to do anything? Who else do you need? These are the killer bees. These are the guys that you want to hitch your saddles to. When you don't give Le'Veon Bell the ball, everyone complains. They cry. The pitchforks and torches are out. And the same thing with Antonio Brown. So why are we worried about other people? If you have Jesse James catch a few passes here, I imagine Ladarius Green is eventually going to get involved as this season moves forward. There's still a lot of football left to be played. I think he's going to get involved. I think Kobe Hamilton has been fine. I think Eli Rogers is one heck of an asset. But don't forget, how long's Kobe been playing out there? Handful of games. I think his first start was with Miami. Lost Marcus Wheaton here for the season. He only came in for like a game or game and a half. Sammy Coates has disappeared due to injury. He was the guy who stepped up before that. Eli Rogers started the season, disappeared in the middle of this season. He was in a boot too, and then apparently some discipline thing, and now he's back on track. So it has been a mixed match type of wide receiver core, but I don't think it's anything to be alarmed about because whoever you get in there has been performing. So why deviate? If you have somebody, this is the comment I made about the Cleveland Browns game in the last episode was everybody questioned Pete Carroll. Why didn't you just hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch in the Super Bowl? And I said the same thing. It's like you hand the ball to Lev Bell on the 1 yard line and get that touchdown on the untimed down to go in halftime with that lead and increase it to 14-0. So why deviate from that? Everyone always thinks that Todd Haley's trying to outsmart himself, so why let him? So who cares who else steps up? As long as someone steps up. You can't have everyone dropping passes and playing like garbage or maybe Ben throwing behind. But the Steelers have been pretty good at not making mistakes. They beat themselves offensively against Baltimore, and I think there was a comfort level there with Ben being hurt. Ben got hurt in Miami, then did not play against the Patriots, and then got hurt or came back from that injury against the Ravens, and they also lost Marquise Pouncey at that point, which also disrupted some of their timing in the silent count. This team stays healthy, I don't think we have any problems. So I think they're facing an Indianapolis Colts team. Well, they're on the road. This Colts team is down. They're not as good as they had been. And even when they were winning games, they were winning games by 3 points or less 2 years ago. When this whole Andrew Luck thing started, all he did was throw a bunch of touchdowns. They spent some picks, some luxury picks. These are the things people criticize the Steelers for doing. When the Steelers are finding wide receivers in like the fourth round, like a Martavis Bryant, or even a third rounder with Sammy Coates, they have been spending so many draft picks on defensive players. They haven't had to spend any picks on offensive players. The Colts are the exact opposite here. They need to repair an offensive line that has allowed Andrew Luck to be sacked 35 times. To give you any indication of that. Heading into last weekend and heading into the Cleveland Browns game, the Cleveland Browns gave up 30 sacks on the season. The Steelers get 8. Now, the Tennessee Titans get 5 sacks on Sunday. So you're looking at a Colts team that's given up 35 and a Browns team that's given up 38. They both went into Sunday, last week's game, giving up 30 each. This Colts offensive line is as bad as the Cleveland Browns offensive line, if not worse, because the Cleveland Browns have at least had to deal with an injury or so and having to replace and shuffle players around that they've lost for the season. I'm sorry, my knowledge of the Colts here, as far as their offensive linemen, I do believe these are the guys, they're just trying to find somebody that can play and block and protect their franchise quarterback, and they cannot. So all of these luxury items like a T.Y. Hilton are kind of a moot point if you can't get them the football. They're gonna and now you're gonna have Scott Tolzien back there. Steelers are gonna disrupt timing. They've got some puzzle pieces they can move around. Like I said, they didn't take Timmons off the field. They didn't take Shazier off the field. How about Sean Davis? This guy can play everywhere. This is what they envisioned. He's a hybrid player. Listen, Sean Davis, you can give him some time, but remember when everyone's like, Ryan Shazier, we should move him to safety, which is like just an incredibly stupid idea. He's never played safety. Sean Davis is the safety version of Ryan Shazier. You can put these guys all over the field. They're going to create problems. And even though, and Brian said this too, this stuff is on tape now, some of it is. I think Keith Butler, I think they're finding their identity, finally. But will they find it in enough time? It's the 8th time the Steelers have played on Thanksgiving. They have not won a Turkey Day game since 1950, but overall they're 22-6 against the Colts. And like I said, they've outscored them the last 2 games, 96-44. And then, of course, in those 2 was Ben having an explosion. We take those 300-some yards out in the 1 TD. I said 11 TDs and about 1,200 yards. But in the last 2, that 96-44 scoring in favor of the Steelers is Ben throwing for 10 touchdowns at 886 yards. Colts, 25th in run D, 30th in pass D. All their corners, secondary banged up. I don't know. I don't see it. You got everyone worried about secondary receivers. You got people saying Ben isn't comfortable maybe throwing to a few guys. I think that's crap. He threw a 2-point conversion that was designed for David Johnson, who catches, 5 balls a year? Get out of here. Folks, this is going to be fun. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. As always, thank you for your comments. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Thank you for sharing with a friend. Thank you for leaving reviews. Thank you for everything. Truly appreciate it. The show has been gangbusters. I'm truly humbled by everyone who leaves the comments, and that's truly what I'm thankful for this Thanksgiving. But before I sign off here, I also want to wish a happy Thanksgiving to my team over at Steel City Underground. That'd be Associate Editor Eric Herman. That's HERRMANN. Can't forget that or I'll misspell his name. Also, Terry Fletcher, who's always sure to keep me on point even though sometimes we don't agree. Brian Roach, who does the previews, the reviews, the good, the bad, the ugly, and some other things in between. A lively character if you ever speak with him on social media. Just one heck of a guy. Josh Fitzer, who has baby on the way, has all kind of big things going on in his life. And then Zach Celadonia. Finally learned how to say your name, so happy Thanksgiving, buddy, and thank you all. And make sure you follow all of these great people, all the great writers, this whole team over here at SteelCityUnderground.com. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I wish you all, once again, a happy Thanksgiving. Go Steelers, and be safe on this holiday weekend. Be good on this holiday weekend, and I will catch you sooner than later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.